Dr. Eric Topol has long been one of the world's foremost cardiologists.
Hey, great to see you.
He has now become the foremost expert in the exploding field of wireless medicine. And this explosion, he says, is about to make our healthcare better and cheaper. Watch what he does with a cell phone.
And we'll just pop this iPhone into it like that.
He shows how simply his modified iPhone produces a cardiogram for a patient.
So you just put your fingers on that. There you go. And in a second, in the first second, then it stabilizes. There it is.
The device was approved by the FDA in December and is now sold to physicians for $199. Topol tells his patient he just saved a $100 technician's fee.
So are we close to using this to say I'm going to diagnose you and prescribe 4 or 5 apps instead of 4 or 5 medications?
Well, these days I'm actually prescribing a lot more apps than I am medications. You can take the phone and make it a lab on a chip. You can do blood tests, saliva tests, urine tests, all kinds of things, sweat tests through your phone.
So how does it work? It starts with a collection of thousands of pods containing tens of thousands of inventory items and a collection of pack workers on the side of the building, as you saw. We send it on a mission to go and fetch that pod, and we ask it to drive in Manhattan-type north, south, east, west trajectories and to tunnel underneath the other pods as much as possible, leaving the highways clear for inventory traffic. But you can see them drifting across the highway there. And we're just trying to arrive in the queue in time for the next pick. We don't want too many there. We don't want too few there. Here's an overhead view of the queuing that takes place or takes over at this point. Supporting the pick worker, they reach in, pick, scan, pack. Here, you go back to the queue and you see behind the scenes, we've made her life incredibly easy, but we're actually rotating pods, bringing the next one in, and managing the whole on-deck process there. When they're done with the pod, of course, it now needs to return to storage.
Let's meet our main character, Mrs. Yamato. She is a 37-year-old woman from Osaka, Japan, who has never smoked. She goes to her primary care physician with a persistent dry cough and labored breathing. The physician prescribes a chest X-ray which shows a suspicious mass. A subsequent CT scan and biopsy confirms the likelihood of cancer. 10 days later, the test results are ready, and Mrs. Yamato is once again in the waiting room. Dr. Norton steps into his office to update himself on her case. He sees on the Watson toolbar that there are 2 new pieces of data available, so he presses on the Case Information tab and sees the results from the tests. The molecular pathology panel has found a mutation. However, he is relieved and encouraged to see that the MRI shows that the cancer has not spread to Mrs. Yamato's brain. With the newly available test information, the Watson advisor has identified possible treatment options with much greater confidence. The first plan, a 3-drug combination, has a high level of confidence and an acceptable match with Mrs. Yamato's preference to avoid hair loss. Dr. Norton wants to see the reasons behind Watson's top suggestion, so he pushes the evidence button. Again, he sees the reasons on the left, along with the specific references on the right.
Metals technology, again, you can grow really complex geometries. This particular heat exchanger was designed for the Formula One racing team. And this is grown in aluminum material. It's ALSI 10 meg. It's a casting aluminum. And the design comes from one of our design software partners, Within. And Within is located in the UK. And with the software, it mimics nature. And you have the capacity to maintain the strength but reduce the weight. This is an acetabular hip cup, and This was grown in titanium. This was designed by our software partner in the UK within medical. And with this particular acetabular hip cup, it has randomized porosity, grown right into the file.
Paintable battery is a new concept that we have introduced here. With the paintable battery, we have taken an entirely different approach to make these batteries. We first converted all the components of the battery into paints. We could then use these paints to literally paint batteries on any surface and using nothing but just a spray gun. So basically, using this approach, we can convert any object or a surface to a battery. For instance, the ceramic tiles that we converted into batteries could be used to build the entire exterior walls of a house. A wall made of these batteries could then be covered with solar cells, and this combination of solar cells and batteries could be used to capture and store the solar energy into useful electricity.
In this project, we introduce a new wireless primitive called ambient backscatter that enables interactive devices that compute and communicate without any batteries. Ambient backscatter enables wireless communication by leveraging the signals all around us, instead of generating our own. Say two devices, Alice and Bob, need to communicate. Alice can send a message to Bob by either absorbing or reflecting signals from a nearby TV tower. So for example, Alice sends a 0-bit by absorbing all the incident TV signals and a 1-bit by reflecting these TV signals. Alice and Bob do not generate their own RF signals, and they use no batteries. Now imagine a world where everyday objects such as keys, wallets, and sunglasses are enabled with ambient backscatter tags. These tiny battery-free devices can leverage ambient Wi-Fi, TV, or cellular signals to communicate with each other and localize themselves. For example, if a person loses his keys, the couch can use ambient backscatter to communicate with the lost keys and alert the user. Tiny ambient backscatter devices can also be embedded deeply into inaccessible sites, such as concrete walls, floors, or roofs. Since embedded devices have no battery, they last forever and require zero maintenance. Such tags can leverage ambient signals for sensing and communication and enable long-term home monitoring and industrial application.